For today's Watercolor Wednesday, what I decided to do is speak a little bit on how I incorporate my subjects into my backgrounds to avoid that cut and paste feel, to avoid them being isolated or floating. And it's a matter of bringing the tonal value of the background into the shape, into the subject. And by connecting the two of them, which I'm going to show you in a second, you actually get your background and your subject working together. So what I thought I'd do is just give you a very quick exercise on this, something that you can do at home that will actually show you if you have an issue with your tonal values and help you also understand how contrast works and why contrast is basically the secret to making your background and your foreground working, your background and your subject working. And then maybe what I'll do next Wednesday, for the next Watercolor Wednesday, is work on how I incorporate the subject with the foreground, because I actually connect the background with the subject with the foreground, which means that there's no isolated areas in the painting. Anyway, let's start painting. Okay, I want to do two examples here. I'll just put the space in. Two examples, very simple, pretty much the same thing, but just to show you the difference when it comes to contrast. So if I was to choose a shape, I'm just going to do a cube. And by keeping the shape extremely simple, then it just becomes easier to focus on the principle rather than actually trying to get the shape right. So do something like a ball, a cube, something really basic. I'll do the same thing for the two of them. What I need to do is I need to determine or look, if it's reality, where the sun is coming from, what direction the light is coming from, the light source, in case it's inside. I'm going to say that my sun or my light source is here. So my light is coming down onto the subject. When it's coming down onto the subject, this side will be the side that has the most amount of light on it. This one, which is a little bit faced away from the sun, but there's still some direct light that will touch that side. This becomes a light value. Not as light as this one, but lighter than this one, which is the opposite direction. Therefore, this is where the shadow will fall. Okay, it's on this side of the box. Now, the whole principle of this is understanding how we use a background to incorporate the subject. Again, this can be a still life, it can be a portrait, it can be anything. So the idea is contrast. It's all a question of contrast. And if we look here, this side, there's a dark value against the background. This side, there's a mid value against the background. And here it's a light value against the background. So if I wanted this shape to stand out a lot, I need to have a contrast, something that contrasts basically between the background and the majority of the shape. So the biggest surface that I have of this shape is actually this one. It's this shape here which sees the box touch the background with the most surfaced area. Here it's just a tiny line, here it's a tiny line. So it's basically this side needs to contrast a lot to its background, and you're going to see it becomes really easy. But at the same time, I know this is a mid value. Now, again, what I'm doing, like always, is showing you my way of painting. So if someone says that's not how I do it or they do it differently, it doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean, they're wrong. It just means basically we're using different methods. There are many roads to Rome, so, everyone has their own way of doing things. I'm just showing you in these Wednesday lessons the way that I paint, because, I've got my live courses on Mondays, and I run out of time to tell you stuff. We talk about so much stuff, but I run out of time. So my idea of doing this was actually to help bring in more information. Now, this is my background. You see, it's already contrasting really well, but this is a mid value. This is a mid value. I can literally bring that value in straight away, but I don't need to keep this black. It's not going to be white. I'm going to be going back into it. So I would literally attach this side as well. And if I decided that I'm going to have a cast shadow, my cast shadow, I can quite literally add in already. So I have literally incorporated my shape into its background. When people say to me, which shape do I paint first? It's neither. I paint the two of them at the same time. Okay, so that's how I do it. I make sure that I leave whatever is white, white, and my background, whatever value it is, light value, mid value, dark value, I can bring it already into the subject. All I need to do then is go and go back into it and create more contrast. Okay, so this was where I have my ultramarine, but I don't have any apparently today, so I'm going to put some violet. All right, let's just go a bit darker. This is a little bit of a Windsor green, just to get a darker value in, just to show you the difference. If I was now to raise the contrast level between this and this, you're now going to be able to see the light side much more than before. But as this is darker, all of a sudden this looks different to its background. Okay, so I could quite literally just keep my dark side darker, the shadow darker, and now this box is actually beginning to stand out from its background. I've just increased the contrast. Strong contrast here, a middle contrast here, no contrast here. Maybe I want to go darker still so that the contrast makes this side of the box even more visible. So again, I'm going to go back into my color and I'm going to make something even darker. All right, even darker still. Let's go for a bit of red or something, just to make it darker still. And if I was to go back now and darken this side, but you're going to see that all three sides are now visible. All three sides are visible, but the side which is the most visible is the side that has the most contrast. So that's the white next to the dark and the white next to the mid value here. So when I paint a subject, my subject, so that's my box, is directly incorporated into my background all the time. Next week, what I'll do in the next video for next Wednesday is I will do a video that shows how the foreground and the subject connect. So this is all about the background and the subject. I'm going to do it again so that it can be seen perhaps in a little bit more of a more fluid fashion than what I've just done. So let's do this again. Keep it really loose. You don't need to overthink this thing and overpaint it either. I can choose a mid value, for example. Let's go for a different color just to be a little bit more adventurous. Okay, I'm going to put my background in. All right, keeping that white side dry, which means the color won't run into it. I can automatically bring this wash in to the light side of my shape and into the dark shape. Absolutely no problem, because I know this dark shape. I can go back and darken it after. Okay, that means that this is already incorporated into the big shape of the painting. It's not being cut out, and I don't have that cut and stick sort of feel on the paper. All I need to do is go back in and change certain values to give more visibility in areas that I want. And I can go back in. Doesn't matter what the color is. This is all about tonal values. It's not about color. All right, even if the colors were the same, it doesn't matter. It's all a question of contrast. So as this and this side are not very different, I'm not really feeling this side of the box too much. This side I am, because the darker side contrasts well with what's surrounding it. So this side is very visible compared to this one, and visible to the background. If I'm not seeing the space enough between the shadow and the box, then if I wanted to, I could just go back in and even darken that a little bit, just to help the box sit, have that feeling that it is actually really sitting on the table, floor, wherever it is. But if I find that's not dark enough, it's just a matter of contrast. This is why I was saying it's just a matter of contrast. So I can go back in, maybe just darken this a little bit. Don't need to even do it everywhere. It just may be this side that I decide that I want to darken. Remember, a painting doesn't have to be the same thing everywhere. Maybe you're just going to want to darken part of that background. And again, if that's still not dark enough, you can go back in multiple times. I know people say that you shouldn't go back into your watercolors too much, but sometimes you just do, because you want to get the feel right. And you can go back in several times. Just make sure that your brush is drier than the paper, and you can go back in quite often. Just be careful the way you do it. It's not the fact that you're doing it, it's the way that you're doing it that will create the problem. Okay, I go back into my watercolors all the time. So if I'm going back in, I'm now creating the contrast. So my white side is contrasting well with the background. This side, which is my mid value, is contrasting well with its surroundings. And the darker side, but it too is contrasting well with whatever's around it. All right. And so it's very easy to build a subject up. You may need to go back into it, which isn't a problem. The moment that your brush is drier, you don't overwork your washes, you will need sometimes to go back in. But incorporating a subject into its background is all about linking the background into the actual shadow side of the subject, and they connect straight away. Then a little bit of extra detail, perhaps a little bit of darker values. You can play with that as much as you want, but that will create more visibility just until your subject is done. So that's incorporating a background into a subject so that they look like they both belong in the same space.